Beautiful. So here, lovely electrolytes. That's what we're going to be diving into. We want to know the when, the where, and the why. What's all going down about them. Before we get into that, though, to give you a little bit of an insight as to who I am, who this person's talking, my name is Jay. I am a certified specialist in sports dietetics. I am a registered dietitian as well. So, understanding that food and performance component and how those two things connect, that's my bread and butter. That's what I love. So, during my career, I've been a research dietitian at The Ohio State University. I was able to get kind of that nerd side of things to understand the research and how all that works. And then I was able to become the first full time dietitian for the Columbus Crew, the professional Major League Soccer club here in Columbus. I was with them, fortunate enough to win an MLS Cup championship. And then during my time there, and then also continuing since I've left there, I'm the consulting dietitian for the U.S. men's national team. So here after this presentation, feel free to also turn that match on. We're playing Mexico here tonight. So we got the guys all locked in, ready to go. So hopefully it'll be a good one. But for what all of you signed in here for, today we're going to dive into what are electrolytes. What exactly are those things? It's a big buzzword. We see it on a lot of different packages. So what are they? What are the main electrolytes? Some of the causes, signs, and symptoms of electrolyte loss if we're deficient in them. Some signs of dehydration and how those things are interconnected, along with when to replenish electrolytes. Some of those electrolyte-containing beverages requirements to be able to know, is this a good product? And then some actual examples of top 10 electrolyte products for athletes, and then also the opposite end of the spectrum of non-hydrating beverages to potentially steer clear of a little bit more. So here, right off the bat, electrolytes, what are they? So electrolytes are those lovely little minerals that are found in your blood. They help regulate and control the balance of fluids within the body, as well as also to help with blood pressure, muscle contraction, and keeping our overall system functioning properly. Those electrolytes and that kind of like first part of that word seems like electricity. Well, it helps with those nerve signals being sent throughout the body. It helps deliver those messages to be able to, again, let those muscles know to contract. So if we got the NBA playoffs kind of going, if you go to shoot a ball and you need to flick the wrist to be able to get that shot off, you need some electrolytes to be able to send that message, to be able to have those muscles contract and perform that process optimally. So electrolytes involved in a whole lot of things. And as you can tell, if we don't have enough electrolytes, if we can't do those things, the performance is going to decrease and be impacted just a little bit there. So the main electrolytes, these are the things known as sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, calcium. I feel like we need to bust out that periodic table, going back to chemistry a little bit here. But these are those main electrolytes within the body. This is what does all that magic. And we want to make sure that we have an adequate balance of all 5 of these within our body to perform optimally. So there's a few different things that can cause electrolyte losses. And those main things are, one, being intense exercise, which results in us sweating more. Sweat is going to be one of the main contributors of electrolyte loss, especially for athletes. If you've ever gotten some sweat in your eye and you felt kind of that sting, that's the electrolytes. That's that sodium component in there causing that burning sensation. Some other not so fun situations that can also result in electrolyte losses are vomiting and diarrhea. That's why a lot of times, if ever those situations do arise, one of the old school recommendations is the Pedialyte, the Gatorade. And the reason for that is because it helps replenish those fluids, replenish those electrolytes, and it sits a little bit easy on the stomach as well. Some other causes of electrolyte losses and things that you need to be mindful of that can impact the amount of electrolytes being lost and also those needs. One, being weight. Larger individuals, larger surface area, going to likely be sweating more. They're going to need more electrolytes and more susceptible to losing them. one's fitness level. And this is one where, as you become more trained and more acclimated to that training, your body's primed to start sweating to be able to keep that body a little bit cooler. So, as your fitness level increases, that sweat is actually going to decrease some of that sodium concentration. So, fluid intake is going to play a major role there. But if you're sweating a lot, you are still going to want to make sure that you're increasing that electrolyte intake. If it's somebody who may be a little bit less fit, the body may not start sweating as quickly, but the sweat that does come is going to be more concentrated. Also, meaning that they need to replenish those electrolytes a little bit more. The intensity of the training session is also going to impact it. The harder you train, the more you're going to sweat. And again, coming back to that sweat component, the more you lose, the more you need to replace. Same situation with that duration of the activity. Then the humidity, as well as how much you sweat. Again, those two things hand in hand. The more humid that it is outside, the less your body's actually able to cool itself down. The way that the body cools itself down is with that sweat. It's actually the evaporation of that sweat that causes that cooling factor. When it's humid, the sweat's unable to evaporate. It more so just drips off of you. So if ever you're out training and you look kind of at your arm and you see that sweat just drip as opposed to just kind of evaporating, that's a situation where your body isn't able to cool itself as well. So you're going to sweat more as the body's trying to cool itself. And again, you sweat more, you need to replace those electrolytes more. So if we have significant electrolyte losses, we can run into some issues. Those main ones being dehydration, fatigue, muscle cramps, and muscle spasms. So dehydration, we know that's going to negatively affect our performance. Fatigue, yeah, we get tired, we're not going to be able to go as hard or for as long. The muscle cramps and the muscle spasms, this comes back to that kind of electricity component in that muscle contraction. If all of a sudden we have a little bit less of those electrolytes in there, those signals start to misfire. They're not able to send that as efficiently. And so because it's misfiring, those muscles are going to contract at potentially non-ideal times. And in the situation of the cramps, they're going to contract and lock and hold on to that. So by making sure we have the proper electrolytes within our body, that signal is going to be able to help come across a little bit better to decrease the chances of that occurring. And so when sweating, the primary electrolytes responsible for all of this are sodium and chloride, sodium being that number one. Now, dehydration, which again comes along with that electrolyte aspect, if we are dehydrated, the big things that are going to pop up are we're going to notice ourselves being thirsty, those dry lips and tongue, headaches. That's the biggest thing for me. That's when I know that, all right, I got to grab some water and some little electrolytes real quick. So headaches, weakness, dizziness, nausea, and again, those cramps. So things just to keep an eye out for that if any of these pop up for you, your kids, or any other athletes that you're around, make sure if this occurs, we're throwing them some extra hydration. So replenishing electrolytes, when do we need to replenish them? So there's going to be a bunch of different situations, and it's never necessarily cookie cutter, but some main times are going to be if you're exercising for 75 minutes or more, you're likely going to need some more electrolytes. If you're exercising in very hot temperatures, you're going to be sweating more. You're going to need some extra electrolytes. And then if you're naturally a heavy sweater, or if you're a salty sweater, you're going to need more. So we all know ourselves. If you are a heavy sweater and you just have a lot of fluid that your body's letting go up to try and keep itself cool, you're going to need to increase that. And what we mean by being a salty sweater, sometimes this is a little confusing. Again, going back to how I mentioned before, if that sweat ever gets in your eye and you feel that sting, you're a salty sweater. Another indicator is if ever you're wearing, say, a black shirt or a ball cap, if you notice a sweat ring kind of form around the collar or the brim of that hat, kind of a white ring, that's sodium buildup. That's indicating that your body is pumping out a lot of extra sodium and your sodium needs are going to be a little bit higher than perhaps, say, the individual beside you that doesn't have those little sweat rings going on and things. So, next time, if you don't know this, just check it. Check your clothes, see if you have any kind of that buildup. If you feel kind of your forehead and it's kind of gritty, you're going to have a little bit of extra sodium that the body's excreting, and you want to make sure to replace that. Electrolyte drinks. So, the powerhouses of sports drinks, Gatorade and Powerade. The reason that they're powerhouses is because they're formulated really well. So, per 8-ounce serving, you're typically going to want to be right around kind of that 14 grams of carbohydrates and roughly 28 milligrams of potassium, 100 milligrams of sodium. This is going to range and vary quite a bit from product to product. But for the most part, if you're right around this general area, you're going to be in a good spot, making sure that you're providing your body with what it needs. That's a good kind of benchmark for it. So for the electrolyte drinks, those specifically are going to be a little bit even higher in some of those electrolytes. So this is going to really come into play for some of those saltier sweaters, those heavier sweaters who need to replace that a little bit more. So as you can see here, that sodium intake or sodium content is a little bit higher. That potassium content is a little bit higher. And when it comes to that carbohydrate concentration, 5 to 10% solution is what gets thrown out there. But what is 5 to 10%? Really, it comes back to, again, per 8 ounces, if you're around that 12 to 15 grams per 8 ounces per cup, you're in a good spot. So if you have a 32-ounce bottle, if you're anywhere from around kind of 48 grams to maybe 60 grams type of a thing, perfect. Absolutely perfect from that carbohydrate standpoint. And also, too, those carbohydrates are going to be great for those competition situations. So we'll dive into that a little bit further on. Some specific examples of those electrolyte products. Some popular ones that I want to say I've used just about all of these with athletes I've worked with. We've got Drip Drop, Gatorlytes, Clean Hydration, Ladder Hydration, Liquid IV, Element, Noon, Right Stuff, Tailwind, Thorn. There's a plethora of them. But these are going to be 10 top ones that we would recommend. So in particular, if you are a heavy and salty sweater, two that I'm a big fan of that I would recommend that have a lot higher sodium concentrations would be the Right Stuff and Element. All of the others are going to be more so kind of that general need. Obviously, yes, it's an electrolyte product, so the electrolytes are going to be a little bit higher than, say, a typical sports drink. But that Element and the Right Stuff in particular are really going to have some higher sodium content. So just be mindful of that. So to kind of break that down, if we actually look at the nutrition facts label for a sports drink on that bottle, if we flip that over, there's those sodium milligrams and what that sodium concentration is in that product, as well as that carbohydrate aspect. So again, that falls kind of right in that range of those types of things that we're looking for. For electrolyte products, there's a few more words and it's typically kind of squished together a little bit more, but they're going to be listed in there. So look for those key little indicators, those key electrolytes, and make sure that there's a little bit of them popping up in there. And then check in that carbohydrate content to make sure that's in line with your needs as well. Now, for that other end of the spectrum, those drinks that do not replace electrolytes and will not necessarily always be the best at hydrating you. Protein shakes. They have their time and their place. Absolutely, they're fantastic. But if hydration is that goal, those usually aren't going to be your best bet. Soda, yeah, usually that's something we may want to kind of hold off a little bit on regardless. But in particular, it's not going to contain a lot of electrolytes. And same thing with juices. Great vitamins and minerals within it, not so much in the electrolyte aspect. Energy drinks, those are a can of worms in and of themselves. They have a lot of things in them, but typically not so much in the electrolytes. So for various reasons, those are kind of worth keeping on the shelf. Coconut water, great marketing, markets itself as that natural electrolyte replacement, but the concentration of those electrolytes are usually subpar and not enough to really give that effect that we're looking for. And then some of the fitness waters. Again, not all are created equal, but just double checking that nutrition label and or those supplement facts to be able to verify that, see that that sodium content's up, see where that carbohydrate intake is kind of falling in line with, to make sure it does match your needs. So be a little mindful of those as well. Foods, though, can be a great source of electrolytes as well. Don't feel as though you have to get the supplements or you have to get the sports drinks to be able to get those. Food is a great source. Saltine crackers and pretzels can be fantastic for that sodium piece. Bananas and potatoes are great potassium sources. So a lot of times when people think potassium, banana is the first thing that comes to mind. Potatoes are phenomenal sources as well. So don't feel as though you just have to stick with the banana. But other things, again, spinach, beans, avocados, if you've got that nice balance of whole foods within your diet, odds are you're going to be in a pretty good spot. So beyond hydration, again, that food is going to be able to play a major role in your body's ability to take up, absorb that fluid that we're consuming, to be able to maintain that overall hydration level that our body needs. And also, too, dependent on those foods, they can contribute to that hydration, not just the electrolytes. So in particular, melons are fantastic. So if ever you've seen any of the pictures or videos of your favorite sports team, at one point or time, there's probably a little image floating around of them having watermelon after practice. It's able to provide that great extra fluid intake while also a little bit of carbohydrates. And a lot of times too, you may see a salt shaker that they'll add a little bit onto the watermelon to, again, have the fluid, have those electrolytes, two birds, one stone. Beautiful. So for case study one, here we've got Jason, a 24-year-old track and field athlete. He's practiced for an hour and a half in 85 degrees heat. Following practice, Jason drinks 2 bottles of water within 3 hours, each bottle being 16 ounces. Later, Jason starts having cramps in his calves, in addition to a headache and excessive thirst. So I'm going to ask you guys here a little bit. Start to put some of what we just discussed into application. What factors put Jason at risk of electrolyte loss? Within the chat or the question and answer aspect of things, feel free. Put in your responses. What factors put him at risk? Did Jason rehydrate properly following this practice? What were some of the signs and symptoms that he had indicating electrolyte deficiency? And then what sports drink would have been appropriate for rehydration following practice, given the circumstances? And what nutrients in particular is that drink going to contain? So, going to give you guys just a couple seconds here. Take your time, go on through. I've got kind of the chat pulled up in case anybody pulls anything up in there. Oh, and I'm just seeing chat is disabled. Oh, no. How tragic. All right, let's see here. All right, I just switched it to everyone. So thank you. I appreciate letting me know. I apologize. Technology was working so well for a minute there. But because I didn't have that one turned on, if you're able to respond in the chat, perfect. If not, A-okay. We will have a second case study. So here for this one, and good old Jason. Oh, going back. Almost got ahead of myself there. So for good old Jason, I'm trying to get this. Technology is just great for me right now. I got the Q&A right in the middle of what I'm trying to be reading here. So perfect. So case study for Jason, the factors putting him at risk. It's hot and he's out there for a long time, for an hour and a half. So he's sweating a lot. That is going to result in him needing to replenish the overall fluid intake as well as those electrolytes. So while the water being perfect to provide that fluid, he's coming up short in those electrolytes. So had he provided one of those, say, element packets or a noon tablet to be able to drop in that water bottle, he'd be a lot better off. He'd be able to replace everything that was lost in that sweat. He would make sure that he was able to rehydrate a little bit more effectively because that sodium is going to help the body absorb that water. And he'd be a lot more quicker rehydrated, refreshed, ready to recover, and good to go the next day. So moving on to case study number 2. Samantha, a 20-year-old volleyball player, recently decided to exclude sports drinks from her diet because she heard they were bad for your health due to the carbohydrate content. She started restricting sports drinks about 2 months prior to preseason. Then, once preseason hit, Samantha was having practice and lifts 2 to 3 times per day. After a week of preseason, she started feeling weak and more fatigued than normal. Additionally, Samantha is a salty sweater. However, she didn't understand what this meant in regards to her health. So Samantha had a lot going on there, and preseason is always a crazy time. So was Samantha told misinformation about sports drinks? What factors put Samantha at risk of electrolyte loss? What would the carbohydrate content in sports drinks be beneficial for Samantha in these situations? And what sports drinks could Samantha include to prevent electrolyte deficiency? So I'm going to give everybody a second now that I think the chat should be open. I hope, potentially. Again, I apologize. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody. Oh, and I just got a message there in the Q&A that the chat is disabled. I apologize, everyone. I will check and see what's going on there. The Q&A is working great. So feel free. If you want to type in there, though, I'm able to see that. But yeah, I apologize. We're going to kind of call an audible, try to make this work as best we can with that Q&A section in there. But appreciate you guys bearing with me. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start to dive into this. So for Samantha, that misinformation about sports drinks is very common. So yes, sports drinks do contain sugar, and a lot of times that sugar gets a bad rap. In these situations, though, that extra sugar is serving a purpose. The body is going to be able to break down that sugar very quickly, very effectively, and provide that energy. If you're training 2 to 3 times per day, your body is going to use all of that energy. And if the body doesn't have the energy that it's needing, exactly as she started to experience, you're going to start to feel weak, you're going to feel more fatigued, and that performance is going to decrease significantly. So there's a time and a place for sports drinks. In preseason, when you got 2 to 3 practices going on per day, absolutely, they can be an okay addition. If it's the off season and you're more so just kind of relaxing at home, chilling on the couch, probably not the best time to be pounding sports drinks 24/7. So all situational, but definitely in this case, they can be beneficial. The factors that are putting Samantha at risk for electrolyte loss is because of that workload. That and being a salty sweater. You put those two things together, she's going to be sweating a lot and losing a lot of salt along with that. So she needs to be focusing and replenishing those electrolytes there. So yes, the carbohydrate content in sports drinks would be beneficial for Samantha in this situation. And then as far as what sports drinks could Samantha include to prevent that, she could include that Gatorade. And with her being a salty sweater, add those Gatorlights to it. So you'll have the carbohydrate component with the extra bump of some of those extra electrolytes to replenish everything that's being lost in that training session. So a couple of frequently asked questions just to kind of run through here are there any disadvantages to drinking sports drinks? There can be. Again, if we're in situations where we're not overly active and we're more so just kind of relaxing and chilling at home for an extended period of time, yeah, we don't necessarily need that extra carbohydrate and that extra sugar 24/7. If we're in the middle of season and we've got a lot of training and everything going on, the body's going to use that. So the time and place definitely depends on that one. How many sports drinks can you drink in a day? Again, it comes back to the needs. If you got 2 to 3 sessions going on per day, absolutely, you're going to be able to handle and likely need a bit more. Do energy drinks replace electrolytes? No. So exactly as we kind of mentioned previously, energy drinks have a lot of things in them, but not necessarily electrolytes. And due to all of those extra things that they have within them, we're going to want to steer clear of those a little bit regardless. Are sports drinks better than water? Water is still going to be incredibly important. You want to make sure that your overall fluid intake is still on point, and water is number one for that. But the sports drinks can help provide those extra electrolytes and, depending on the situation, those extra carbohydrates. So again, they have their time and the place. It's not necessarily one's better than the other. We just want to be mindful of when we're tapping into those sports drinks. So as far as the timing of when to drink that sports drink, before or after, if we had to pick one, I would recommend before, because you're about to go into the situation where your body's about to use those extra electrolytes, start to sweat. And so if we can be a little proactive and start to get that into the system, you're going to be starting from a better spot. That being said, if you sweat a ton during practice, you're going to need to replenish that. So it could absolutely be applicable after practice as well. And then, is it bad to drink a sports drink even if I do not have electrolyte loss? It's not the end of the world. You're going to be okay. But again, you want to know what works best for you. What are your specific needs? So do kind of that self-evaluation. Do you notice that sweat rim kind of on your clothes or anything like that? Do you need those extra electrolytes? Is it off season? Do you more so just need to focus on general water intake? So figuring out that situation, figuring out what works best for you will help dictate, are those needed? So the action steps in the review: consider the weather conditions that you're practicing in. Is it hot? Is it humid? How long then are you practicing for as well? Get to know yourself better. Are you a heavy sweater or a salty sweater? Do you notice those sweat rings? Do you get to kind of like wring out your shirts? Are you that drenched in sweat? Which is a-okay if you are. We just want to make sure that we're replenishing that fluid and electrolytes appropriately. Do you have any signs and symptoms that indicate dehydration or electrolyte loss? Again, for me, it's always those headaches that pop up. Determine if you would benefit from an electrolyte drink. Once you've assessed everything there, that's going to help dictate, do I need this? And if you think you should include a sports drink, decide on a sports drink that would be most beneficial for you. They're not all equal. So a little bit of trial and error. See, again, what works best for you for your needs. So if wanting that quick rundown of those top 10 electrolyte products, again, for athletes, here's a little QR code to go to a great webpage that's got a nice little breakdown of, I want to say, all of those 10 to give you, again, a quick little recap to learn more. So to sign off, it's not the will to win that matters. Everybody's got that. It's the will to prepare to win that matters. And by taking that time to evaluate what your hydration and electrolyte needs are, it's going to have you in that situation well prepared to be able to optimize your performance. So with all of that, if wanting to dive into things a little bit more to figure out, again, what that is specifically for you and what your specific needs are, here at MSD, we've got what we refer to as the My Nutrition Plan. You can sign up for a one-on-one sports nutrition coaching with a dietitian such as myself, where we can manage body weight goals, go over pre-game meal planning, daily nutritional strategies, personalized supplement protocols, all with weekly check-ins to really follow up, have that accountability, put that game plan in place to make sure that you have everything that you need to optimize your performance. We've got 2 free weeks to be able to try it out. So the price is right on that one. So if interested in this, you can sign up for 2 free weeks. And then if wanting to continue thereafter, we can. If you don't want to, hey, no loss, no sweat, pun intended. So if this is something that is of interest to you, please scan this QR code. Feel free to sign up. And again, myself and you can hop on a call, dive into things, and really start to put that plan together. So with all of that being said, we are at the end of our time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to fire those in. I'm going to leave this up for a few seconds here just to see if any questions do trickle in, because the Q&A does work. That's the one thing that we've been having here. So one thing that I've got here from Meg, 5 to 10% carbohydrate, 12 to 15 grams per 8 ounces, roughly. So that 5 to 10%, it goes back to kind of that metric system. For 1 liter, which is approximately kind of 32 ounces, you're going to have about 50 to 100 grams kind of carbohydrates. A Gatorade of that size is going to give you right around kind of 60 grams, give or take. So it falls right in the middle of that. So in general, yeah, if you've got about 12 to 15 grams per 8 ounces, you're going to be in an okay spot there. What are your thoughts on rehydrating with an IV? When is this a good option? So IV rehydrations, those can be a very tricky situation. There's a lot of rules and protocols depending on the sport that you're playing and the level that you're playing on the ability to actually do that. For medical and safety purposes, if you are absolutely dehydrated and going through kind of heat shock or kind of heat exhaustion and things, absolutely. Safety wise, the IV can be very beneficial. If it's more so you're just thinking, I might kind of take an IV just to be able to help boost things a little bit, don't do it. I would err on the side of caution. I would highly recommend just stay on top of it. Just grab some extra water, grab some extra electrolytes to be able to put into that, and you'll be a-okay there. But those IVs, they do run added risks of we don't always know what's in them depending on where we're getting those IVs from. There's a lot of shops now that do kind of the vitamin IVs and things like that, which this would kind of fall in line with. So be careful. It's a sticky situation is what I would kind of say on that one. Next question, are the over-the-counter sweat patches by Gatorade accurate and worth trying? I'm always down for gathering a little extra data. So the Gatorade patches are something that I'm still continuing to dabble with and trial myself. I do know that for very heavy sweaters, they're improving it, but for very heavy sweaters, sometimes that patch isn't able to hold all of it. So it can sometimes give a little bit misinformation, but it can be very helpful to give kind of that spot check of see, okay, even if it is a bit off, just to get an idea as to kind of where we're at. So if interested, feel free, check it out. But anytime that you do things like that to gather more data, treat it as just data. Don't take it as 100% accurate. Take it with a grain of salt. Again, pun intended. But it'll be able to help give you a little bit better idea as to kind of how your body is responding to things. But that Gatorade one would be one that I would say, yeah, check it out if curious. Can I go back to the QR code real quick? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say we're referring to this QR code, possibly. I'm gonna leave that right there, type of a thing. So I'll leave that for a hot second. I think this is QR code. If not, let me know. But perfect. Then is it safe for a 12-year-old to take electrolytes every day? She is a swimmer. So especially for somebody 12 years old, at that age, the body is still developing. The sweat glands aren't fully developed either. So especially for adolescents, usually they're not sweating a whole lot to begin with. And it's more so just trying to keep the body cool and keep the overall fluid intake adequate. So depending on the situation though, I would recommend just kind of following up with the pediatrician just to see kind of what their thoughts are and things like that. So it's tough to really kind of say for certain in that situation, but generally adolescents are still developing. So something just to kind of be mindful of there. Perfect. I think that's all of the questions. I'm going to ramble on a little bit just to give an extra second in case anything does trickle in. But I appreciate everybody that was able to hop on the call, hop on this webinar here today. If you do have any other questions later on, feel free, kind of reach on out to us at MSD. We'll do our best to be able to get back to you. But again, if really wanting to dive into things a little bit more for yourself, or if you know somebody that's interested that may benefit from this, let them know about that My Nutrition Plan. Again, the first 2 weeks are free. Got nothing to lose, but we'll be able to dive into things a little bit more and see what really works specifically for you. So with that, again, appreciate all of you hopping on here. Appreciate your time. Love the great questions. And yeah, have a wonderful night. Take care.